Hi, my name is Elizabeth Joy, and I am meeting with Garrett Blair, not only just our past president from 2020 to 2021, but also the former VP internal from 2019 to 2020. So a lot of experience that we're going to be talking about today, a lot of information that we're going to get downloaded into the mind. So Garrett, it's such a great pleasure speaking with you. My name is Elizabeth Joy. I am the new board member for 2022 to 2023. And I'm really excited to kind of just hear your knowledge and really like know what I can expect from this experience. So I guess it kind of comes into the very, very first question. And that's what's your experience in terms of being a student leader? What does leadership mean to you? Like what can I take from that?
So it's so nice to speak with you today, Elizabeth Joy. I'm not exactly great with dates either. So hearing you go 2022, 2023, I was like, oh my gosh. So you're already a step ahead of me because I never was able to figure out the dates. So um, we're starting off kind of hard hitting here with the question. There's no tell me about yourself. So leadership is something for me um that I think anybody that gets involved with the MSA needs to be passionate about. When I ran for Vice President Internal Advocacy in 2019, it was a large part of what I would always talk to the students about is leadership and student leadership and what that both meant to me and what they wanted to see out of it. So leadership for me is, I think first off, being vulnerable to opinion. So I didn't typically make any decisions through my time at the MSA without consulting with some students, with other board members, with staff. And sometimes my ideas were incredibly well received. Sometimes they were lukewarm. Sometimes they were freezing cold. Um, and being, I think, a leader or being a good leader is being open to um, having people tell you that you have a lukewarm or cold idea. I'm also a big believer too in that leadership is something that isn't shown all the time. Growth is shown all the time, but leadership, there are moments in your life or in your career that you can either step up or step out. So I think a big part of leadership for me has always been, what are those moments and how do we rise to the occasion? And there are times where especially student leadership is one that's incredibly difficult, trying to almost have to play politics with the world around you. The amount of times that I've been told from people outside of the organization that basically, oh, we don't really listen to student leaders because they're just angry kids yelling, and it's having to navigate that perception while remaining forceful around student issues. So I think leadership is one of these things that you have to roll with the punches, but you also have to be prepared to punch back. And a big thing for me about leadership is that what's my seat, but where do I want it to go? And if you invite me to something, you'd best believe I'm going to speak to it. I love to chat.
As do I. So that's very, very comforting as well. So, okay. So with that in mind, what was one of the most impactful experiences as being part of the MSA that, like, because you were involved, you are forever changed for it? Like, what was the thing that you very much so took away that you feel it molded you to become who you are today?
So I have a story, and it'll lead me into my point. So when I was president, every year the MSA always gets invited, as well as the McMaster Student Union and the Redeemer Student Senate, to a budget consultation meeting for the past couple of years. It's been Philomena Tassi, who's also, I do believe, currently the Minister of Labor. And basically it's a 30-minute to an hour meeting where she listens to each of the student unions and what are some of their concerns that they're hearing, what are some opportunities they'd like to see. So we touch on everything from OSAP to jobs to summer employment to international student concern, access and affordability. So we touch on everything. And one of the points that I had brought up was students' access to daycare and how students with parents, or students that are parents, not with parents, students that are parents are oftentimes at a disadvantage because if they have classes that run from 6 to 8 p.m., a lot of daycares are not open until 8 p.m. So they're being forced to choose between basically going to school and getting an education or a re-education and taking care of their children. And I'm a big believer in that's not a decision that anybody should have to make. Like you shouldn't be penalized for having children and you shouldn't be penalized for trying to get an education. So I brought that up to Minister Tassi. She came back to us a month later, and the party in power, and this is not a political endorsement by any means, but the governing party had put forward a childcare proposal, and she told me that that my feedback to her actually altered the proposal a little bit, to be a little bit more student focused, to take into account some of these student to take into account some of the student concerns that I had brought forward. This for me leads to I think my point about the impact of what I took away is advocacy. I'm in child and youth care. I graduated from the child and youth care program at Sioux College, but I did 2 years at Mohawk. It taught me that advocacy sometimes is I don't want to say getting in people's face, but sometimes the more direct advocacy is very how do I want to say, kind of in your face almost. But the power of a story and the power of advocating for groups of people that have been historically underappreciated, undervalued, and underrepresented. That's something that I have taken in my professional years. I just actually got a job, and a large part of why I think I got that job was my discussion around advocacy and what that means and what are some of the points and priorities that I have done through my time at the MSA. And then I've taken away as well from the MSA a large, I think a lot more empathy and compassion. When you're hearing students, and typically students come to you on their worst days, they have flunked a class and are facing automatic withdrawal. They are struggling with their landlord. There's a lot of landlord abuse and concerns going around with post-secondary students. They're struggling with food security and food sources. They're struggling with their raising a child, being on their own, a lot of students for the first time. And the MSA taught me how to advocate. It taught me how to communicate effectively and to shed that image of an angry post-secondary student. It taught me how to write advocacy papers. And then the last thing, sorry, is and I use this even in my personal life with when we were facing the student strike, or not student strike, the faculty strike, when that week of the faculty strike, I, as a private citizen, as a Sioux College student, drafted an email advocating for last term placements to continue, and sent it off and away, and to the program head, to our program coordinators, to the student union, to the president of the college. And I've been told that schools are going to start rethinking how they do placements in order so that next time that there's a possible strike, students don't get any more negatively impacted than they have to.
That makes sense.
And that for me is one of my, I think, crowning moments of I don't think anything will ever really trump that for me.
That's amazing. That's a lot of takeaway, a lot to. It sounds like an amazing experience to know that you were involved in impacting so many people's lives, whether it be like directly or just like as a rippling effect. That's so amazing. So it kind of makes me think of my next thought, where it's for those who are looking to become student leaders in the future, right? And me being a new student leader as well, what is your greatest piece of advice when considering it or being involved?
Do it. No, you know what? I started in at Mohawk College in January. I started one of the fast track programs. And I was passionate about making a change. I still am, but I was passionate about leadership. I was passionate about the work that nonprofit organizations do. I did not have a great experience at my previous post-secondary institution, but Mohawk, because of the MSA, made me feel calmer, more comfortable, more invited, more included. And I decided I wanted to become vice president internal advocacy, and had to run in an election against my opponent was a business student in their 4th semester, and I had been at Mohawk College for 6 weeks at the time.
Wow.
I was in a smaller program. I knew very few people, but I was passionate about it. I probably lost about 40 pounds in the campaign from just walking. And when results were announced, I had won by 51 votes. That term I had during that election, I like to think I was one of the most visible candidates. A lot of people that I had spoken with ended up getting involved with the MSA later. So I think my advice going from all of that, do it. And you don't have to, if you don't want to run in an election, that's fine. If you're passionate about something, if you feel that the MSA could be better, if you think the MSA could have a new idea, any student can walk up to our front desk, send us an email, and discuss it. You don't have to sit on the board to be a student leader. You don't have to sit on the board to be, somebody that makes an impact. Because anytime that you have an opinion and want to express it, that's leadership. Whenever you stand up for your classmates, or you stand up for accessibility, or you stand up for national students, or LGBTQ plus students, that's leadership. So my I think advice, more than just do it, is don't let anyone take your voice.
That actually resonates with me, just because for myself, that's I think one of the reasons why I decided to get involved too, right? Is because I wanted to, I'm in a satellite campus or a partner school associated with Mohawk. And for me, I just felt like there was just getting involved in starting my process. There was a lot of disconnect in terms of like, Mohawk didn't know what the other school does, and the other school wasn't sure what that does. And so for me, I was like, I was liaisoning for them make sure that what I needed to get done was done effectively. And I'm like, if this is what I have to do for me, how many other students who are not as vocal as I am and not willing to befriend a teacher? Like for myself personally, I'm a mature student. So for me, I just felt like I could only imagine teenagers coming out of high school and not knowing how to communicate yet in that professional manner where they're taken seriously, how much more so they needed a voice. And so I wanted to be able to share what I experienced, as well as being like the voice for them as well, because I completely understand even moments of freezing, even though you might know it here, you might not be able to vocalize it out here. And so being able to now have someone who can speak on your behalf it's a relief, because at least you know that someone is there vying for you in your corner, right? So I feel like that's kind of
Well, and yeah, and you know what, Elizabeth Joy, you come from a very different background than I come from.
right.
So while I like to think that I am quite good at this advocacy thing, you know, I've done it for 3 years, basically my entire adult life. I've worked in advocacy,
Mhm.
but I'm not you. Like I don't know your story, your struggles. I don't know what supports you had, maybe didn't have. Um, so and you can tell me that,
Right.
but I find so much more impactful when people that have that lived experience get involved. And I look at too, you know, you come from a different campus that isn't the Fennel campus.
Mhm.
there there are so many ways. You know, there's so many things that the MSA does well at satellite campuses, but there's so many ways that the MSA can improve too in the satellite campuses. So that voice for all students, but your lived experience of being at a different campus is just incredibly valuable to the MSA, and this is why we have student leaders.
Right.
You know, for people like you, to as somebody who in my brief time knowing you, who isn't afraid to, you know, speak her mind and stand up and ask questions and work, you know, with people, but be, you know, that respectful, forceful. um you know, and you touched on another really good point too, in that for the students we have that are fresh out of high school, you know, a lot of them, you know, had to ask to go to the washroom 4 months ago.
Exactly.
You know, couldn't leave school. A lot of them don't have their G licenses, and what we're asking them to do is to basically decide what they want to do for their future, and have them do it. And that, you know, some students, you know, thrive and love it and understand and do well and do great, and great for them. Other students really struggle, and that's why I think the MSA is here, is to fill in the gaps of the students that struggle, but then struggling too, you know, I say that students, I remember one student had a concern last year. She had done poorly on a test and was facing automatic withdrawal, and I sat with her and we discussed, and we chit chatted a bit. And what she, or 2 years ago, sorry, and what she had said was, she said, you know what, Garrett, she said, I was a straight A student all throughout university, all through here, all through there. She said, my mom passed away a couple months ago, and it's really struggled. So she was somebody that came in thriving, but due to a life circumstance, um, needed that extra support.
Mhm.
So that's why the MSA is here. You thrive, you go, you do phenomenal things, amazing things. You don't need us ever, but then maybe you do, and maybe you need some support. Maybe something happens in your life and you go, you know what, that isn't right. We need to speak up for that, and you become a student leader and you become an MSA board member. um, that for me is one of the most impactful student appeals that I ever did, and it came out to a very nice uh, resolution. Um, but it was one of these things that when we talk about, you know, things that stick with you and why the MSA is here, it's for people like that, but it's also, Elizabeth Joy, for people like you to thrive and to hit your, you know, to hit the purpose and identify that student leadership component. You know what, student leadership is something that I'm always super passionate about. I've worked in and around politics since I was 14 years old.
Amazing.
I continue to work in politics to this day. um I don't know my life without
Without
politics,
it,
without leadership, without
right?
advocacy. I don't. It is who I am.
It's so interesting just because for me, I've always shied away from politics. I actually am not a fan of politics at all because so it's interesting. I am in social service work, but
We're cousins. I'm in Child
right,
Youth Care to
exactly,
SSW. We're cousins.
exactly. So I'm in social service work, but what I find about it is like right away it can be political because of the changes that you're trying to make and the kind of like barriers that you're facing and the fact that you have to climb over this barrier and that barrier. And so I just for myself, I'm not I realize that there's only so much you can do for systemic changes, but if you can make changes in somebody's immediate life, that's very rewarding because you're able to see those changes a lot faster. And I think that that's why I decided, well, I was recruited. Like I didn't even know what I was getting involved in when what had happened. Mel
That's
just
how
came
we
up and
get you.
yeah, Mel, I just wandered in one day virtually in the metaverse, and Mel's like, "Oh, I like you. Come meet the rest of the board." And I was like, "Okay." And then I met everyone. I'm like, "All right, I don't know what happened here." Like, cause like I mean, I'm not even in the Fennel campus. I was just, checking things out. But I'm so grateful that she did pull me in because there were a host of things that I already saw that like, if they just made this little tweak here, or if they just made that little tweak here, things could go so much more smoother, right? And so I didn't realize how much I do enjoy advocating and offering suggestions and problem solving, because I feel like that's what you do as a leader, right? You're finding solutions in unique ways because it might not be something directly, but it might be just getting people to the right resources and helping them navigate how to use resources properly. And I find for myself, I love resources. Like I dubbed myself the resource queen because I'm always I'm always hustling, looking for like the best way to get things done, right? And so when you're able to do that, it's just very rewarding. And that's for me the reason why I decided to join the MSA, to be honest, because I just want others to know how I'm like matrixing my way through this experience.
And you know what, Elizabeth Joy, it's so interesting too, because I know a lot of people that don't like politics, but I know a lot of people that are very strong advocates. And you're in social service worker and I'm in child youth care. Politics and the decisions that people out of your control decisions are being made every day that impacts it impacts your life, it impacts my life, it'll impact job prospects, it impacts continuing on to different post-secondary education, if that's what you would like. I look at too, when we talk about systemic change, Elizabeth Joy, you as an individual might not be the one that can create that systemic change, but you might empower the next board to continue that work. I'm always very cognizant of what's the immediate impact of a change, but what is the impact, 10, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, because the struggles that I went through at university, the challenges that I went through at Mohawk, the challenges that we've all gone through, hopefully should not be the challenges 10, 15, 20 years in the future when children are going to school.
Exactly. And it's also teaching them how to, my goal too is like, especially with my son, is to how to cultivate the right kind of like how to empower himself in his school experience, how to speak up. Fortunately, since we're talking about children right now, like fortunately, I know he is a very vocal part of his class. He might not do all the work online, but I know his teachers know who he is. He's answering, he's reading, he's doing it. And that for me, I feel satisfied in that, that's how it's going so far. And I think that I want him to be able to take that confidence into the next phase of high school and then into the next phase of post-secondary, where he doesn't stop speaking up and speaking out for himself, so that way he gets the supports that he needs. Because I think that that's so crucial, because a lot of times people don't know what's available to them. They don't know what is their right? And one of my biggest things, even as a new, like, I'm 35 right now, just full disclosure, right? I know.
No way. I thought you were, how do I look older than you?
I'm gonna be
So
36
mad.
this year. No. So my whole thing is like, coming into school, I still feel like a baby, that I don't know anything. You feel like you're kind of like flailing and and so when being a part of the MSA for me is a big comfort, because I know I have people that I can talk to and communicate with about, what do I do here? Oh, I got a ticket for parking. How do I appeal that? Because all I was doing was trying to get some information. Like just these things that seem so minor but can feel so big when you don't know what's going on and what the process is, because there's really no introduction to, like, okay, you've started school now, here is how you utilize this service that you're paying for to its max. Because really and truthfully, when I look at going to school right now, I am paying for my education. So when I purchase a service, any type of service, I pretty much know how to utilize it before I use it. And two, there's always an instruction manual that comes up with it too, or some way that I could go on YouTube and say, hey, how do I use this device? But with school, it's really not that cut and dry. It's really not that clear. And there's so much that school has to offer. So it can feel so overwhelming that you then, especially if you have any type of social anxieties or things like that, you just don't bother even asking, and you just kind of sit back and silently suffer. And for myself, even though I am a vocal person, there's only so many times I can repeat a story before I don't want to say it anymore. Like, I thought we covered it. I thought we were clear. You nodded, you agreed. So why isn't anything done? Like, for myself, that is like so major. And so coming into school now, I want no one to feel like a baby that's floundering. I want everyone to feel super empowered. Like, this is how it works. These are the tips and tricks. These are the tips to make your experience. This is how you talk to your teachers if you want, if you're a student with accommodations, this is how you get the most out of your accommodations. There's some fantastic people that can really help you out in that way. I think that those conversations right at the beginning can really change the experience. So I think that when you're getting involved with the MSA, or just knowing who your leaders are, it would really help.
I last thing, just very, very quickly, I think too that's I think Elizabeth, I think hit the nail on the head there too, is that for a lot of students, the MSA is their first kind of run-in with nonprofits, with a nonprofit organization, and they're automatically part of the MSA family because they're Mohawk students. They have their health and dental plan. We do the transit pass. Right. Those things are what students get regardless. Right. So when we talk about equity of opportunity, when we talk about what's going on with like nonprofits and the supports, and trying to feel like you're not floundering, the MSA's motto is lean on we. So I want all students to know that they can lean on us for support, and if it might not necessarily be an MSA question, but we can navigate you in the right direction on who to ask. I think a big thing too is that, like, we cannot, for example, we can't change your grades. That's not our power, but we can you know, we do the academic appeals. We can assist you in developing an academic appeal. We can you know, sit with you and have you vent to us and discuss what happened and what you should do, and we can advise you of the process. So it's leaning on us, but knowing that we'll prop you up, and our hope is that we push you to advocate in your life as well. You you know, because for a lot of people this is the first time that they've really seen a nonprofit in action, and it's so nice for them to see that, because nonprofits, not all of our days are like rah 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 go MSA. That there is a lot of advocacy work. There is a lot of, you know, board member work. There's a lot of intricate parts going on behind the organization, so that we can better support students as well. I yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sitting down and really giving me all of your knowledge that and your experience, because I really, like, you know, it's really invaluable to the process of kind of coming into the board and what I can expect as a newly inducted board member, but as well as for the students who are going to be utilizing the MSA, that they can feel free to share their voice and never feel like their voice is not heard, because that's exactly what the MSA does, is to amplify the voice, so that way their concerns are addressed. So I really appreciate this chat and this interview. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today. Yeah, and I mean, if you could, my last question would be, as a send off to the next, to us, me being the new board member, and to the rest of my the board members that are on my team, what is your last piece of advice for us, so that you want us to take away from what you've done? Like, what is the takeaway that we should be bringing forth into this next phase?
Well, when you're on camera, make sure that the camera puts in your whole face. If you look at previous Garrett clips, that my camera was here for most of my time. So that's a big piece for me that I will never live down at the MSA. I think to the board, what you put into this year is what you're going to get out. If you go through the motions and just don't, you know, don't try to lean on each other, don't build the friendships or relationships, don't basically, if you just go through the motions, that'll be what your year is. It's just motion. But if you you know, work hard, if you take the time to do even just a little bit of reading in your personal life about student unions, what are some work they've done, keep yourself up to date on what's going on. If you you know, show that passion and continue to show that passion for student-led change, student-led development, this year will be the most fulfilling, gratifying year of your student experience. The MSA single-handedly altered the course of my post-secondary career. I did not come in as a winner in post-secondary. I flunked out of my of my first program. I left with like a 6%. A 6% is not something that anybody, I think, has ever gotten. I am very unique in that. Coming to Mohawk, though, feeling comfortable, feeling empowered, and feeling like you can be your authentic self changed, for me, the course of my college career. And that happened because one of our former presidents, Andrew Patatny, took the time to talk to me. But more than that, met me where I was at and took the time to listen. And I accredit my success in post-secondary to him. I got to work with him a bit. So you as board members, reach out to students, connect with them, hear them, You don't even have to talk. You don't even have to discuss the MSA services. Hear them and listen to them. And I think you'll have such an amazing, gratifying year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything, Elizabeth Joy. I hope you have a very great year at the MSA.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And all the best in your future endeavors and as you continue to pursue your political career.
Thank you so much.